Okay, welcome back to another episode of Tax Pros Unplugged with Jared and Kelly. We have a special guest joining us this week, which we're super excited about, talking about some scary stories from the IRS. Just as a general reminder, our podcast is intended for informational purposes and not your own personal tax advice. So we kind of want you to take us seriously, but remember, we don't know your individual tax situation. So why don't you kick it off, Jared, and introduce our lovely special guest?
Yeah, so we've got a special thing today called Shielding Yourself. This is the title, the running title, I guess we're going to call this outline or this episode, Shielding Yourself from the IRS. So we thought, what better way to do this than find somebody that does this primarily as their practice? Her name is Amy Brosnan. She hails from God's Waiting Room, also known as Florida. This is her whole practice. And Kelly, I don't know how you feel about this, but as EAs, we can do the similar job. But I will tell you, this is my least favorite thing that I have to do in my practice. So, Amy Brosnan, everybody, if there is applause somewhere of a button somebody could push, that would be great, but we don't have that. Amy, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what your background, reputation, that kind of stuff. What do you do? Why do you do it?
Well, hey, thanks for having me. So I have been in the tax practice since 2005. So I have just hit my 20-year mark. I
And you don't look a day over 30.
There you go. I honestly never thought this would have been the position that I would have ever ended up in. But honestly, about was it 2016, I thought I needed to get my EA, and I didn't know what that really entailed other than it was a credential. So I went and I did the testing, and ever since then, the EA has come in more handy, not just in preparing returns, but in the representation of clients in actual audits. And boy, did I learn more about taxes doing audits than actually preparing returns.
So,
Thanks.
Amy, kind of give us a breakdown of what type of clients do you represent? When I say represent, for those who don't understand, we're talking about defending taxpayers from the IRS. So, do you typically have more individuals, small business, high net worth, that kind of thing? What's your bag of clients usually look like?
So my bag of clients are usually, and as it's changed over the years, my bag of tricks is kind of everything. But that 1040 with the Schedule C is a huge portion of representation. Yes, all the other ones get audited, but nowhere near close to the Schedule C's and Schedule E's.
Wow, that's super interesting. So when you see people coming to you, like, is there a big overriding misconception people have about what representation looks like when it comes to the IRS or even tax professionals who probably, I imagine, refer you business? Like, is there this big, like, what don't people know, or what do people think that's actually not true?
So one thing that I think is common between tax pros and the taxpayer is how important bookkeeping and actual receipts are. We assume we have bank statements, we have credit card statements, and that will be enough. And it is not enough, and it is becoming a huge issue. So if you're not keeping good books and records and the actual documentation to follow, you're going to have huge problems if you're audited.
It's that ultimate trump card when you pull those receipts out, right?
Yep.
Ooh, we're gonna pinpoint that statement over and over again too, right? So like,
Well, I'm going to digress here a little bit and go a different direction. And I don't know if this is a good practice to put into place. At least what I tell my clients in regards to receipts, I'm telling them, hey, receipts are important. This is the ultimate thing, what we take to these audits and things like that. But receipts fade. So I tell my clients, go digitally scan these in every year, create a digital file for this. Is there something that you would recommend beyond that? Or in regards to, is there something we can add to that as a tax pro, at least from my side of the table, that would be beneficial?
Well, a couple things. Besides scanning, we walk around with a camera now. It goes with us everywhere. If you're really bad about saving receipts, snap pictures. That's what I do. You will see tons of pictures snapped in my phone of receipts because I know they're going to fade. I also know that I lose everything. So if I shove it in my purse, it is now in the, great abyss. So if I snap a picture before I even put it away, um, at least I have a picture, and then I have that digital copy, and then I can transfer it wherever it needs to go. But your cell phone can be your best friend in this situation.
Do
So
you
I'm going to wrap.
recommend any apps? Do you see
Good
anything
call.
that people like?
I'm going to be honest. Genius Scan is probably the most easy to use, or I'll be honest, I'll just snap it with my actual phone. Like the app, I have an iPhone, so I will just use the iPhone. I know, shake your head. Um,
He's so backward.
I know, but he's not the only one I know. But I just snap a picture with the camera and then I have it. And that way I'm not worried about, darn it, I lost the stupid, $88 receipt for the parking. Where did it go?
Your phone does take pictures, right, Jared? Even though
I'm
it's
pretty
backward.
sure. I've never actually taken pictures with it. I'm not sure. I know I got, this may make a difference. I got those big number keypads. Like, you're seeing those commercials like get grandma or grandpa a phone. That's my phone. I'm
We
just
know.
kidding. That's a stupid
Yeah, we
joke.
know.
So
It still flips open.
yeah, it flips it
It's
open.
still, yeah.
It's one of those unbreakable ones that doesn't have data. But anyways, Amy, from your perspective, so I want to ask this semi-delicately because we do have listeners that are tax pros. We have listeners that are individuals that are just taxpayers. What do you think, from your perspective, separates a good or great tax pro compared to a not so good or not so great tax pro from the prism or the perspective of being the shield that's protecting individuals or business owners from the IRS?
Ironically, it's not credentials. That's the big thing. The best thing that a good tax pro does is asks questions, engages with them, gives them that value that they're paying for. We aren't just data entry. I know a lot of times it feels like, oh, we're just inputting information, but we're more than that. We should be having those discussions with our clients, whether it's do you have your mileage log for that, 10,000 exact number of miles that they give you, or that magic ceiling number that falls down on them. The fact that they have that discussion with you and they're taking those extra steps to discuss with you. That's what makes a good tax pro. It's not that they're just inputting information. They're doing that above and beyond. AI can do that for you. We have to show them we have additional value and not credentials. It will be the person itself and how much effort they put in.
So you're saying that if I just drop my tax return off at a place and the only phone call that I get from this person or this individual preparing my tax return is, hey, it's all done, come sign and pay, that's a bad sign? Is that what you're saying?
I might be saying that, yes. I mean, unless you have a W-2 only. But yeah, I would like to think that we do more than data entry. We bring out those items to them. It's hard
It's hard.
because it
I'm
is
not gonna
easier
say
to just
I'm
drop
just
them
gonna
and go.
I'm gonna full disclosure. You might not hear from me.
No, sometimes me too.
You might hear from somebody on my team, but like
If I know you, I may not ask you the 3 million questions because we've had the discussion 300 times before and you've
that's right.
ignored me.
Plus, Jared is so much more high touch when it comes to this, and because he like loves sitting across the desk from people so much more than I do.
Love's a strong word.
I know, but it's a lot more like than I do.
Jared, are you more in person
I
than
do
virtual?
95%, maybe even 99% of the tax returns with people across the table for me. And I tell this to tax pros across the country. If you're not asking questions of these people, then you can't effectively or accurately do a tax return.
Facts.
Yeah,
But again, Kelly, you're not just reaching out. You may have an employee reaching out
we
or
do.
someone, it's that discussion. It doesn't have to necessarily be you. But as long as you have office policies that say, let me just assume that the 10,000 miles is accurate.
Yeah.
Are you following up to give them the protection, that shield, to let them know what the IRS expects on the other end, just in case?
So let's talk about that. So when you see, because you're the girl that sees when it comes down to like what the IRS is looking for, what is the big red flag that trips people up?
So always car and truck, always car and truck, always travel and meals without fail. If any audit has come across my desk, it is always going to have those three full items on it. The other one that can pop up is supplies because they've caught on to I can buy supplies at Walmart, I can buy supplies at Amazon, but I can also buy home stuff at these locations too. And then sometimes high other expenses can walk right in there and zing you. And that's usually where they get in the most trouble is other expenses. And then utilities, especially if there's no rent. Because
Oh,
what are you paying utilities for?
good call. So now when you see these, are these mostly Schedule C or
Yes,
mostly Schedule C?
mostly Schedule C.
Is there an income range where where that gets tripped up?
That had actually changed. I was seeing really low income. I was seeing what we would call cost of living audits, where they were creating so much losses that there was no taxable income. So how was the client living? Now, with the previous administration, when they put that $400,000 barrier in there, I jumped tremendously, but those returns became intensely complex, where they started to look at depreciation for cost segregations, or they would definitely dial down on harder on the travel, on the meals, because those people would be taking the trips. They had the money to do that. So right now we're still seeing that over 400,000.
I want to jump back into, you said other deductions on these Schedule Cs. This is the hill I will die on with in front of tax pros.
Yep.
I say this everywhere. Okay, everybody listen out there. If you have a Schedule C, you need to go look at your Schedule C in your tax return last year. And you need to look at that Schedule C in the bottom right-hand corner when it says other deductions where the tax pro just wrote something in.
Yep.
I'd say to tax pros all the time, I don't ever let my staff put anything there. I come at you like a Catholic nun with a ruler if I see anything there. Because the thresholds, from what I understand, and Amy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's an algorithm for thresholds for other deductions. Meaning, you're meaning to tell me that you can't find another spot to put any of those deductions in the other 27 or 30 places that we could put this on a tax return. Meaning, if you put $2,000 on there, that's going to stand out. So that's going to catch the eye or this algorithm that the IRS has to go flag this tax return. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, it's kind of more the diff score picks up on the weird coincidences that show up on a tax return. So if you can't find something in the 32 other spots, I think it's 32 other spots, it kind of and then you have the NACIS code that affects that because that is actually very important because there's set numbers that they look at that says this looks standard this for this industry versus this industry. So if you have the wrong NACIS code, that could trigger that as well. But all of a sudden, if you don't have a place to put these other expenses, I definitely think that I'm not going to say it's a red flag, but it definitely changes that algorithm to start looking at more.
I just tell my staff, if you can't find another spot, this is just going to look lazy. Like you can't.
I mean, unless it's something really specific down to an industry and you can't figure out that it would, belong in, like don't list out everything. I had an audit where they just listed out every stinking item and it was a disaster. And real estate agents, I hate to say, are the worst.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I differ a little there. I do use the miscellaneous or the other deductions. I don't use miscellaneous. That's a no-no. But I mean, if I have an item that again is completely supportable, but also does not clearly fit, which I like to make sure that then I've clearly defined that item, because it feels like it's so easily supportable, but also it's going to flag if it's in another category because it looks so out of pocket, So I'm like, you know, because like, could I say it's advertising? Yeah, but then it makes it look like advertising's like 20%, and so sometimes I make a discretion there that, I think it's better off in
I
the
just
other.
I just want everybody to be careful when using it because
Mhm.
honestly, it's something that all of a sudden the IRS, and then what they look at, they say, oh, well, how do I know you didn't claim it in supplies or office or legal? So all of a sudden, it's made the audit a little more complex because you may have to prove that it wasn't taken somewhere else.
Interesting.
Especially if the names are too similar to any of the other names on a Schedule C.
Interesting.
All right, Amy. Next question. We all know that I make the joke all the time with attendees that I'm going to eventually write a book about the crazy things that are told to me with clients. And we get all these weird questions, and people hit us with stuff that we have no business answering because we're these confidants. So my question really is because we're so close with our taxpayers, when that audit notice arrives or that correspondence letter arrives, how do you mentally, emotionally prepare these people for this process, for what's
Um,
coming?
it depends.
Spiritually.
Yeah,
In
spiritually, that's a
all
good one.
ways.
Yeah.
Honestly, it really depends on the person's personality. Um, if they're high strung, there's nothing you're going to be able to say to calm them down. And as a high strung person, I tell them I understand that. If they're, if you can talk them out of that panic mode, I always start off the conversation with this information request does not mean you're going to jail. This does not mean that you're going to have your house taken. The IRS doesn't want your house or car. They don't actually have the resources to come get it, so calm down. Now, calm down is the worst thing you could say to a client in audit, much like saying it to a woman. It does not do good things for you. But really, it's telling them when I'm stressed about it, that's when you should be stressed about it. And I always tell them the worst that can happen is you can owe the IRS. That's the worst thing in these audits, unless there's fraud. And did you commit fraud? And then they all go, well, no. And then, okay. So
I like that.
if you tell them, hey, you worry when I worry. If I'm worried, that's when you become worried. As long as they're not that super high strung type A personality.
Great. Well, so let's talk there. You mentioned the worst thing that can happen is that you owe the IRS. And because you probably see this a lot with like resolution stuff, what what is something that again people don't understand or overlook in understanding when it comes to owing the IRS a back tax debt? And I heard you mention like you're probably not going to jail. So what don't they know here when it comes to owing the IRS? Is it the worst thing ever?
Not really. I mean, honestly, I think I would rather owe the IRS than the states a lot of times. The states will, I think the states are probably more collect happy than than the IRS. I also think that if you owe the IRS, there's these payment options, and there's a lot of different payment options. And we freak out because they think at the end of this audit, if I owe all this money, I have to pay it at once. And obviously, the IRS is well aware that not everybody has that kind of money, just, disposable income just sitting under their mattresses. But they do have options. But the other thing they stress is compliance. Don't be afraid to file a tax return if you owe money. Again, the worst that could happen is you owe the IRS money. And we need to understand that just because you owe them, they will take payments. So we need to breathe through. You don't always have to pay them all at once. Would they like that? It's the government. They want all the money they can get right now. But in reality, you can make payments. There's options out there for resolution of tax debt, of what's going to happen when they didn't prepare correctly.
So I want to throw something at you, Amy. I want to design in my head a really tough situation. Let's say I haven't filed my tax return in 27 years and I've owned a Schedule C pool business the entire time. And I've never filed taxes. I know that I've had a bunch of income. I've received 1099s. And it's clearly my fault. I just decided I don't want to file a tax return. But I mean, obviously, I'm assuming that you feel like I still deserve fair representation and an actual resolution. How do you handle these type of cases where it's clearly my fault that I didn't do what I was supposed to do, but I want to make sure that I'm getting the best deal I possibly can from the IRS?
It's maybe not a true story, or maybe it is.
Maybe it is. Everyone deserves representation. That's what we need to understand is even if I don't like how you filled out the tax return or I don't like you as a person, you still deserve the representation. Someone should be in your corner. Now, what would I do with 27 years of unfiled tax returns? I would probably start with the last 6 years and get those filed and recreate the income as best as possible and file those 6 years of returns. That's kind of where the IRS stands right now at 6 years. Then, before I did that, though, I, as a tax pro, would request a power of attorney and I would pull out their transcripts to see if there's been any, you know, SFRs where they file the return for you with the letters. And of course, if you've been 27 years, you've probably gotten some letters from the IRS that you're really great at ignoring. Well, at least with the 2848 or the 8821, I can get copies of your information and see what they've already told you. So file the 6 years, get that transcript, take a look at it, see if there's FSRs. And then just file those returns, get that 6 years done. And if you have to estimate, there's Form 8275 that you can disclose that these are estimates.
Interesting. So
recreate.
Let's just say that you take this person who's 6 year or 27 years. I like Jared's very specific question about
number.
somebody that he doesn't know. Completely random. And you get them compliant current, like the six back years. How do you work with people, or do you just like say, hey, I fixed your problem and I kick you off? Or is there an ongoing movement to compliance? And I think the second part of that is that, at least in my experience, I see the same patterns in people who don't file tax returns. Is there hope for somebody who's a chronic non-filer? Can they come out on the other side and become a compliant taxpayer?
Well, I have learned through life that I should not go into anything willing to change people because I can't change people. But what I can do is throughout the process, show them the right way to do things. I can talk to them about it. Again, not just data entry. We're here to bring those people through. We're there to talk to them, add value to their service. We're so much better than we give ourselves credit for. I feel like after we finish tax returns, we should do a football dance, in the end zone when they sack the quarterback and we have like a 10-minute celebration because, woo, I did my job and got paid millions for it. Yay. I feel like we should get to do that because whether we realize it or not, I'm sorry. you know, listen, I don't know. You're probably a Browns fan. You don't get to see that often.
Oh, you're not. Wait. You are not a Browns fan.
If I could turn my camera.
No.
Are you a Browns fan?
Oh my
I
gosh.
got some stuff in here. Yeah.
You know what? I didn't even ask this. We might have to end the podcast right now.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You know about me. I'm loyal to even failures and death. I'll stay with this, and because I have low expectations. You know what
Jared
I mean?
is ride or die. But honestly, just a good conversation with people sometimes tells them that it's okay. But I would tell my clients I would rather file a return and not pay because the failure to file penalty is significantly larger than the failure to pay penalty. So file the return. That's the most important thing. Get the return filed. If you owe, we can figure all that out at another time, but just get the return filed.
I
I
think
want
that's
to
great
shift
advice.
gears on us a little bit. I know we talked a little bit from the aspect that we looked at mistakes people make on their tax returns. I want to shift gears into, because I'm assuming you do representation work for new clients that had somebody else prepare the tax return, another tax preparer or tax pro. What things could you identify, let's say that beyond the stuff that we've already discussed, that a preparer does that could land that tax return in an audit quickly? What are those landmines or things that are not maybe purposely done, but the tax pro does on the tax return that could subject that to more scrutiny?
Couple things. The first thing is not looking at the yearly losses every year and following that business. Is it making money? There are situations where coming out of COVID, everything was different. So that hasn't been as big a focus for me. But pre COVID, honestly, it was watching those tax returns for every year the business has excessive losses. Because again, the IRS is going to pick up, are you intentionally not putting your full effort into it? That's something they pick up. Also, the other thing that triggers audits that most people don't realize is missing information. So if there is a Schedule C, but there's a 1099 NEC that they didn't account for, or a 1099K, or there's stock options or something. If there's a lot of starting to miss information, they will open the rest of that for it'll trigger that diff score to move it to the audit portion. So making sure your clients know what documentations to have, making sure that you know what they should be, having. Now, obviously, we can't read their minds, but there's a point where we do have to say, um, you know, what else could you potentially have? And it's a pain in the behind to tell them every year, I need your W-2s, I need your 1099-Rs, I need you to go to your online Robinhood account because they didn't mail it to you. It's not easy, but again, it shows that we add value because it's not just going to be a potential. If there's a Schedule C and there's high somethings that doesn't match out, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of unreported things, that's gonna trigger and move that diff score so that moves to audit.
So interesting. Yeah. So I have a magic wand that I whip out occasionally. When people ask me questions that with zero context and I'm supposed to, I just say I
Magically
wave my
no.
magic wand. Yeah. I always
Yes.
know exactly what the answer is to the vague question that you just asked me. So if you had a magic wand, which, you might, or other something else, but if you have a magic wand and you want to tell like other tax pros how they can keep their clients out of trouble, what would you do? What would you tell them?
Well, first it would say realize that when you're an EA, you don't get a magic wand. Somehow the people in front of me think that because I have a designation and I know how to talk to the IRS that it's going to immediately get them off on whatever the problem is. Um, but for tax pros, watch those trigger numbers. Watch those, not even the number, watch the trigger categories. Meals, we can always continue to learn about Schedule C meals. They're a problem. If there's no receipt, there's no deduction. It's not debatable. I don't care where it comes from. So you need to be, if my magic wand, I almost I almost hate to say this, but remember those shoebox clients that we no, Jared's like, no. I used to have clients that would bring receipts in a shoebox or in an upholstery bag or a Walmart bag. Um, I almost wish I had those type of clients again. And I can't believe I have ever said that out loud. But they're the ones that I would take and audit in a heartbeat because at least I have the documented proof. But the other thing we have to talk about is meals and travel. They actually need to have a business purpose and prove the business purpose. So taking your client out to dinner is not going to be a deduction. no matter how much business you talk, it's going to be really hard to prove, especially without a receipt. And your Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts coffee on your way in to meet a client is not deductible under any circumstances. Period.
Now wait.
Stop trying to write those off.
Now wait. I heard that everything I eat can be. I heard I can write off my entire life if I eat while I'm working.
That's
It's
only
the,
if you put it all into a trust.
it's those LLCs that
oh,
you
That
have
is
to have.
that is a
That's right.
joke. Sorry, this is why the disclaimer is so important
That's
because that is a joke.
Well, I mean, no, unfortunately, where are our clients getting information from? They're getting their information from TikTok. There's no classes to teach you how to be a good business person. I mean, you could go to college and get a business administration degree, but if you're running a pool business, the chances are you're more good or more better at the pool aspect than the business aspect. So get a good bookkeeper. Like, I understand we want to save money, but when you want to save money in certain areas, cutting accounting is not it.
So I have a question. Now, this kind of goes along with Kelly's question, and this is something that I try to teach tax pros, especially in regards to you're talking about Schedule C taxpayers, sole proprietors. These are the people that are most under the most scrutiny so far that we've talked about. If you have these different various industries, what I've taught tax pros and my own staff is the IRS has a list of what's called audit technique guides. ATGs. So if you've got a mechanic or if you've got a real estate person, go get those audit technique guides from the IRS. They're the playbook that how they're going to attack you. And so if you have the opportunity as a tax pro to go out and find out how the IRS is going to attack you, go read it before you do it and build a defendable position based off these audit technique guides.
Audit technique guides are a huge benefit. I was actually in a cost segregation audit earlier in the year, and they updated the audit technique guide in the middle, but didn't tell the agent. And the position that the agent was taking was now contrary to the updated audit technique guide. So, guess who got to be the bearer of that fun conversation? Um, and guess
Got a
who made
girl.
the agent look really bad? That would be me. The agent was very unamused because they didn't know. But they don't get training like we get training. So those audit technique guides, if you're, and don't rely on the one that you looked at previously because they do get updated. So check on them, check on their last updated date. The audit technique guide is literally going to give you the case law that the agent is going to use, and it's going to be broken out for you so you can have the case law to argue that this doesn't match my case, this matches my case. You're going to be prepared at what they're going to throw at you from the audit technique guides. Now they're cutting those back a little, and I don't like that. I would like more of them. But again, the rules still stay the same in a lot of cases. How much of your use is personal? Do you have receipts for these items? And unfortunately, they're just as aware of TikTok as we are.
So we could have somebody in the IRS watching this right now and saying, Jared's an idiot. I'm going to watch everything he does now.
We're
But
all going to be watched.
so let me, I mean, I share the sentiment that we usually never grow from success. We always grow from our failures here, right? That's where growth happens. So in your own practice, can you share a case where I want to use the word failure loosely, but can you share something that you learned a hard lesson on that has kind of shaped how you do this today?
In the very beginning, um, what shaped a lot of this is my personality because I take things very personal. So I come from as a people pleaser. It is very difficult to argue, um, especially with someone who's quote in authority. So learning to deal with the agents, obviously being respectful, building that common affinity with them. I've met agents that I talk football with. We just BS about football outside of audit season, outside of audits. There are agents that you get to make a personal connection with. And it's not a friendship, it is literally just building rapport. And I've learned to build rapport. But the thing that I've learned the most is no matter how hard I try, I can't care more than the client. And unfortunately, that's a hard lesson because if I have to beg you for information and you don't want to give it and then you're mad at me, um, that's a you problem. I've given you every opportunity. I've told you how I want the documents. I've told you exactly what documents I want. You can't give that to me. I can't help you. There's no magic wand to make the IRS rules change just for you. There's no loophole. There's no backwards way I can make this happen. So the people pleasing and caring more about it than my clients do. That's been the biggest mistake. I have lost sleep over audits that I had no business losing sleep over because they didn't care. Why should I put myself through that when they didn't care enough?
We just need to spend more time together so that I can continue to help you not care as much, Amy.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, speaking of difficult clients, what is, and I definitely hope that you are going to tell me that you have fired clients. What is the trigger that has caused you to fire a client in the middle of representation? Because I want to preface that you said everybody deserves representation, but not everybody deserves representation by Amy because she has standards that she upholds for herself and her self-worth. So what is the trigger that has caused you to fire a client? What does that look like for you?
For me, it is excessive abuse. Um, and listen, I get that they're stressed, so I will take a little bit of lip from them. I will allow them to be sassy. You can even curse at me. That doesn't bother me, whatever. But when, you're calling me at all hours of the night, expecting me to jump at your every whim because you were a CEO of a large company, um, and, you think this is how your secretary behaved, that I was going to behave that way. Those are the type of things that will cause me to say, yeah, we're not going to do that. You can't call me a name. You can't, well, you can. Just, don't do it excessively. But the other thing is not giving me what I ask for. If I can't fully represent you because you're ignoring me, I will not be on the case because then I look stupid to the IRS agent. And I don't want to look stupid to them because they're going to remember me. So I will be very specific and particular on if you're ignoring me and not answering my questions, trying to evade my questions, not giving me the information and not answering, I will withdraw.
Interesting. So, you obviously do some teaching and speaking like all of us here. Specific to representation, if you're talking to a next generation or a newer tax professional who really loves this type of work, wants to get into it, what type of education or training would you recommend that they do to kind of take this on?
So I kind of went in blind. I don't know why. I did take the NTPI fellowship with NAEA, but that focused more on resolution rather than representation. So I really probably went in more blind than I needed to. I would look for classes that talk about, resolution. You have to know the tax law. So as much education as you can get about Schedule Cs, about entities. Again, if they're auditing an entity, they're still going to have the same expectation that they have for Schedule C expenses. The rules don't change at that base level. So take the information that you learn, know the basics of that so that you can grow from there. So look at the NTPI fellowship, look at classes that are audit specific. there's a bunch of organizations out there, but realize when you go into resolution, it may not be for you. You may not have the patience to deal with the people. It takes a ton of patience to calm down someone that wants a weekly phone call because they're stressed out that the IRS hasn't responded to something that you sent last week. So you have to have a personality that will settle people down and be patient. So if you don't have that, and if you refuse to deal with paper, you don't want to do representation, because the IRS basically mails thick files of papers for everything. They can fax them, but they also mail them. So then you end up with a shredder. My shredder pile was about bigger than well, actually it's overflowing right now, because they send multiple copies of everything. So if you can't handle paper, you don't want to do representation.
All right, so I want to ask this in two formats. Well, for two purposes. The first one is for individuals who are filing tax returns, and the other one is for tax pros. What I want you to do is probably try to put this in a bow. If you had to give one piece of advice to individual tax pros and taxpayers to avoid scrutiny in one piece, what would it be?
Consecutive mileage log would probably be the thing that I would be the most obsessive about, because that seems to be the hardest part. And not just tracking how many miles you did for business, it's not just that. You need to know how many personal miles or commuting miles or other miles. Mileage is one of the hardest things to prove. It's probably the one you lose the most in audit. You can kind of defend travel, but the whole point of this, honestly, is going to be keep logs of everything. I don't care if it's electronic. I don't care if it's, a piece of paper, whatever works for you, but logs are going to be your best friend. And then something to prove that was a business purpose. Is there an email? Save that email. Is there a meeting email that you got? Save that. Save those things that prove. So if you're going to go meet a client, send an email to the client to create that paper trail. This is a lot like standing in front of Judge Judy and getting ready to get yelled at. And I tell clients, pretend you're going to be on Judge Judy, because she's going to want you to prove a paper trail. And you're not going to get called stupid. I'm your rep, so I would be the one that gets called stupid. So, if she's going to yell at somebody, it's going to be me, and I want to avoid that. So, honestly, it's keep as much record keeping as possible. This is what is getting clients in the worst trouble right now. And just because you use QuickBooks does not mean that you're doing it correctly. I love MileIQ. Everyone talks about how great it is. Yes, until you don't remember which way to swipe for each trip. And I compare it to Tinder because I can never remember which way is the correct way to swipe. So I would feel bad, so I don't even do it, because which way do I swipe if I like them or not? And that's the same with MileIQ.
What
Like,
are we
which
swiping?
way is I don't well, I'm single. I'm allowed to swipe. But
I don't understand what we're talking about right now. Are we talking
There's,
about, you
there's
talking about
apps,
Tinder or something?
Jared.
Yes,
There's
Tinder.
apps.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's swipe left or right. And in MileIQ, you have to tell it it's business or personal for each stop.
We
So if
know
you
you're not.
forget
We know
that,
you're not on that. And you're happily married, Jared.
yes, we know.
Yeah.
But those of us in the real world over here that don't have that availability, I can never remember which way to swipe. And the same with MileIQ. Honestly, it's a pain. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I've messed it up. And then I get it in audit, and clients look at me and say, well, here's my mileage log from MileIQ. And then I Google one of the addresses, and it's the local liquor store.
Yeah.
And look
You,
who looks stupid in audit.
I struggle with the apps too, and I tell taxpayers when it comes to mileage like this, it's you got to know yourself, know thyself, right? I know that I'm never going to learn how to use this app, so
Facts.
I'm going to forget to push the stupid button, right? So I still use paper. I
I
got
do
every
too.
year I got this little, those little calendars things that,
I got a long little mileage
yeah.
logbook. It's like this big and it comes from like tens or something. Yeah.
Yeah, Amy's like, no, 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 no. I got this thing, this app that connects directly to the Hubble, then back to my laptop, my phone, all of this heart rate monitor thing on my wrist. I mean, she's got this thing dialed in to the point where if she runs to a client, that's extra mileage too.
That's right.
Whereas I still got to use pen and paper. So,
I think it depends really on the person and know your client. Some of them may not be comfortable with the virtual aspect. At least when, they're taking pictures of receipts, that's pretty basic. But if you're asking them to use an app, it's going to be harder and harder. But remind them when taking pictures of their receipts that they get as close as possible and less desktop, because when you send that through to the IRS, it's not pretty, because then you'll see this huge desktop picture and it'll have like this little receipt that you can't read.
I just want to, Amy, I might have figured out what the dating problem is, and that we have to have a lesson in which way you swipe on. I might have figured it out here for you, hun.
If I
pretty sure
actually
that's a different
use
podcast though, isn't
if I
it?
use dating apps, it would be a thing. But again, the swiping, I can never remember. And MileIQ, it's the same. Like the last time I tried to use it, it said swipe to mark business, and I swear I read what side it said to swipe to, and I don't remember. So, I don't know, and I just gave up because I didn't swipe. And then every stop in between to get to the location to get gas, I had to swipe, and I was just like, screw this, I
Well,
cannot handle it.
you're trying to do your Mile IQ, and next thing you know, you're in Tampa meeting this guy named Bill for some reason. It's like,
Yeah.
dang it, I used the wrong app again.
Dang, wrong app. And then I wrote it down on my mileage log as business expense because, when people ask you what you do for a living, I've had people tell me, don't tell them that you do taxes because you don't talk about anything else.
Oh yeah.
See, so, it could be a business expense dating at
I'm
this
going to
point.
help write your
Not really.
profile. I'm
Oh,
gonna help write
please. Please. Because mine currently says I can fold a fitted sheet.
You guys have fitted sheets? I'm just kidding.
Yes.
I'm not in charge of any of that.
He's like, it's not me.
Oh gosh,
Gosh.
See, you can make taxes about anything.
we have detoured off
Completely.
I'm gonna. What is it? What's that thing called? Grinder? What the heck are you talking about? What's the?
Not
no,
Grinder.
Karen.
Not Grinder. Tinder.
Okay.
Tinder. And
So
Tinder
all
can
I
be
know
used
about
for
Grinder is that's
dating
a
now.
sandwich. Okay, that's all I know.
It is not just a sandwich, honey.
You're so adorable. But no, I don't use Grinder and I don't use Tinder, just in case you need to know.
Okay.
But you can use Tinder for dating, not just what it was originally intended. But
We'll let you go there, Jared.
circle
and
back.
Come back around with us.
Circle back, Jared. Oh
Wow.
boy, not Grinder.
Frantically googling what these things are.
Don't
Please,
don't
please
even do
don't
it.
Google Grinder.
No,
Trust
please
us.
don't. Not sponsored. Not sponsored.
Yeah, none of these apps are sponsored.
Here I am making an innocent joke, and I don't even know what that is. So now I'm gonna have to
We
say,
are
what did I
aware.
actually just put out in the old interweb by saying that word? I don't even know. Anyways, let's move on.
Yes.
Moving on. So,
Bring us in for a landing, dear.
all right. Well, at this point, I don't know how far gone we are, but I wanted to say thank you, Amy, for coming on and kind of sharing your expertise, the things, the do's and don'ts, and things to watch out for, giving us a unique perspective from the aspect that you deal with this way more, at least than I do. And I can't speak for Kelly, but that side of what you do is what I actively, every day when I do my job, I try to avoid everything that you do from the aspect when I'm preparing a return. I want to do it at above approach and never have to do any representation if possible. So not everybody's like me and from that aspect, but I want to say thank you and want to also invite, if you're out there, subscribe, download, share any of this content, because it is good content and it's good for, it's not beneficial for any of us here. We're not in this for getting clicks or any of that other stuff, whatever people do with this stuff, but getting good content out there for people to hear. And if they just hear somebody like Amy say, keep your receipts, keep them digitally, that's worth its weight in gold, apparently, when it comes to an audit. So thank you. Kelly, you got anything you want to add?
I was just going to give Amy a chance for anybody who is thinking, oh, maybe I have a need or know somebody that has a need for Amy. Amy, where can anybody who's listening or watching find you? What is your, give us your kind of shout out details and everything where people can actually find you to get your services.
Well, my business is called After the Tax Return, so you can find me on Facebook at After the Tax Return LLC, and then you can send me an email at hello@afterthetaxreturn.com. Just everything that happens after a tax return is what I deal with. And just remember, no matter what, you can prepare a tax return perfect, but sometimes it still could trigger an audit. That doesn't mean that you did anything wrong, but you're always working at shielding your clients and protecting your clients. So if you need help with that, don't hesitate to reach out. Find me on Facebook. You can friend me as well and send me a message, and I'm happy to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks, Jared, for detouring us as usual. And
Yeah, you're welcome.
thank you, everybody, for reviewing and doing all the things. We appreciate you. And everybody have a great day.
Thanks,
Take
guys.
care.